Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Habits coming at you live one more time, and this is Unit 11, Day 3. We're going to be doing some more factoring today, so you can title your notes Factoring when A is greater than 1. Okay, remember last time we talked about standard form for a quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c. This is the value I'm talking about. Last time when we factored, we only had a equal to 1. Today we're going to have a equals more than 1. So if a is not 1, it's a little bit of a different process. So just to kind of jog your memory, what we did last time when we were factoring, let's write the steps over here that we did last time. So to factor, just in short, we found the GCF and we factored, which when we did factoring, we did the rainbow xt. So rainbow xt to factor, to factor. And then after that, we used the box method to check. Okay, so box method to check. So that's kind of what we did last time in a nutshell. So let's just do a quick little rundown of what we did last time. So for example, if we had a quadratic trinomial like 2x squared plus 10x plus 12. I don't want to make the video too long, so I'm just going to tell you what the GCF is. But what we did was we did factor trees, we found the GCF, and the GCF of this guy right here is 2. So we had an answer that looked like this. We had a GCF out front, and we had our 3 terms, and we had our pluses in the middle. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that the GCF is 2 and our remaining trinomial is x squared plus 5x plus 6. So I know you would have had to work that out, but I'm just trying to make the video shorter. So GCF is 2. Let's just pretend we already went through that process. And so now we have to factor this guy. So my answer is going to be in the form of this. So remember, we covered up the GCF and we did our rainbow xt. So let me write my xt out here to the side. If there's nothing there, my a value is 1. So my rainbow value, a times c, was 6. So I put that on the top there and the top there, and that's my product term. I'm multiplying to get that. My sum term is my b, which is 5. So I'm adding to get 5. So I write my factors of 6. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 plus 6 is not 5. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 plus 3 is 5. So those are my 2 factors. So I'll pop them in here. X plus 2, x plus 3. That is my answer. And we could check that answer using box method and then multiply our answer times 2, and we would get what we started with. So this is basically what we did last time. Today, we're going to look at examples where a is greater than 1. And it's a little bit more involved. It has an extra step. So I'm going to write the steps. Actually, let's write when a is greater than 1. This is what we're going to do. So let's write the steps over here to the side. And we're just basically going to add one extra step in there. So first step is to factor out the GCF. So we're going to find the GCF and factor it out. Then I'm going to add a little step in here to say write our answer format again. Because just like up here, I had to have an answer format for pulling the GCF out, but then I had to have another answer format for actually factoring. So we're going to have to write it as a factored form as well. So write the answer format again. Step 3 is going to be factoring using rainbow xt. So this is all still the same stuff that you did last time. So factoring using rainbow xt. And now here's the new step. If a is greater than 1, I have to do something called grouping. So we're going to factor by grouping, and then after grouping we're going to check using box method. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 examples in this video, And then you really do need to practice this, because practice makes permanent. The only way you're going to get good at this is by doing it over and over and over again. So I'm only doing 2 examples because I don't want to make a huge long video. But practice this. You've got to practice it. You can't just be like, oh, I understand what she's doing and move on. You've got to do it yourself, because that's what's going to make it permanent in your brain. So example 1. I am going to have 4x squared minus 15x minus 25. All right, so let's look. First step is to find a greatest common factor. So to find the greatest common factor, I did my little factor trees until I got all prime numbers. So this is 2 times 2. Oh, you know what I forgot to do is write my answer format. Let me write that down here. So if I'm just finding the GCF, I've got GCF out front, and then I've got my 3 terms, and I have 2 minuses up here. So let me put my 2 minuses. And so I'm going to factor everything out. So this is 3 times 5, and those are both prime. And 25 is 5 times 5, and those are both prime. So if I write my 4x squared as, here's my prime numbers, 2 times x, and my 15x as 3 times 5 times x, and then my 25 down here is 5 times 5. We can see that there are no common factors to all 3. So when there's no common factors, the only thing we can divide all these terms by is a 1. So I could pull out of 1 if I wanted to and just write this again. But honestly, pulling out a 1 doesn't really do anything. So when that happens, I really don't have to write the 1, because 1 times this is just this, right? So this one doesn't have a GCF. So after you determine that it doesn't have a GCF, or that the GCF is just 1, we're going to start back over with what we had here, because we didn't really need to pull anything out. So let's start back over with what we had. And so if there's not a GCF that we need to pull out, I'm going to go ahead and write, I'm going to go ahead and write my new answer format. So I'm just going to factor this, and factoring a trinomial, a quadratic trinomial, means that I'm going to eventually get down here and I'm going to have 2 factors that look like this. Okay? So if I look at my steps here, I found we didn't have a GCF. I wrote my answer format. Now I'm going to factor using Rainbow XT. So I'm going to write your XT out to the side here, because we're going to use this area here. So XT is under the side. Now let's do our rainbow. I have 4 times negative 25. That's my A times C. 4 times negative 25 is negative 100. So that's my product value, and that goes on top of both places. Oh, my computer's asking me if I need to shut down. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So that's my product value, and then here's my B value, which goes on the bottom, negative 15. Okay, well, I have no idea which factors of negative 100 are going to add up to negative 15. So let's just try some things. So always start with 1. 1 times negative 100 equals negative 100. 1 plus negative 100 does not add up to negative 15, so that doesn't work. So let's keep going. 2 times negative 50 multiplies, does not add to negative 15. I can't divide 100 by 3, so let's try 4. We know there's 4 quarters in a dollar, so 4 times negative 25, that does not add up to negative 15. How about 5 times negative 20? 5 plus negative 20 does equal negative 15. So these are my factors. So I have a 5 here and a negative 20 here. Now here's where I need you to stop. We did factoring using Rainbow XT, but that is not going to be our answer. Like when we factored up here and we found our 2 factors, that gave us our answer. But that only is true when your A value equals 1, like it does right here. Down here, where your A value equals 4, you're going to have to do this extra step of grouping. So I found these 2 numbers. So let's go back down here. I found these 2 numbers here. 5 plus negative 20 is the same thing as negative 15. So when you have to do grouping, you're going to replace that negative 15 with these 2 numbers. So my trinomial is now going to become a quadrinomial with 4 terms. So I have 4x squared, and instead of negative 15, I'm going to write negative 15 in terms of 5 minus 20. So I'm going to have a positive 5x minus 20x minus 25. So I'm going to take that 15, I'm going to split it into the two factors that equal negative 15. So split it out like this. Next, we're going to draw a graphic organizer. This is going to enable us to do grouping. So leave yourself a little bit of room here, and I'm going to do this graphic organizer. It's a blank and a parentheses plus blank parentheses. And in these blanks, I'm going to pull out GCFs of parts of this. So I'm going to take these first 2 terms right here, and I'm going to find the GCF. Now, if you want to, you can take this over to the side here, and you can do your factor trees and find the GCF that way. I'm not going to take the time to do that. I'm going to tell you, you can do that on your own time. But when I look at this, you can also think, what is the biggest thing I can divide both of these things by? Because that's going to be my greatest common factor. You can figure that out over here. I'm just going to do it a quicker way. So I can't divide 4 and 5 by the same thing, except for 1, and I don't need to pull out a 1. But I have an x squared here, and I have an x here. So there's x's in both terms, and you can always pull out the one with the smallest exponent. So I'm going to take this x, that is my greatest common factor, and that's what you would have found if you did it over here, is that x is the greatest common factor. And when you pulled out that x, you would have 4x plus 5 left. Okay, and again, I feel kind of bad for not doing it over here for you, but you can do that on your own. You already know how to do it. So that's what I'm going to have left. So I pull out the GCF just of these terms. It is x. I have 4x plus 5 left. Now whatever you have in this parentheses, you're always, always, always going to put in this parentheses. So that's going to make life easy. Now I'm going to look at this second grouping, and I'm going to say, okay, this second part of the grouping graphic organizer has to equal what's in here. So 4x times what is going to give me negative 20x? That's right, negative 5. So this is a negative 5. Now, for my factors down here, one of the factors is going to be what's in the parentheses. So it's 4x plus 5. The other factor is going to be what's on the blanks, x minus 5. That's going to be my other factor. So I have 4x plus 5 from the parentheses, and my other factor is x minus 5. Now this should be my answer. So what's the final step? Right, the final step is to check it using the box method. So let's just do that real quick to check. 4x plus 5 and x minus 5. And that should equal, when we get finished, that should equal 4x squared minus 15x minus 25. If it doesn't, we've made a mistake. Okay? So here in this box, I get 4x squared, 5x, negative 20x, and negative 25. Combine those middle terms and I get negative 15, so I do indeed get 4x squared minus 15x minus 25, so it checks. Okay, so there's one example for you. So we found the GCF, and we found that this one didn't have a GCF, and then we did our rainbow XT to get our factors. We split the middle term, the sum term, into the two factors that add up to make it, and then we did grouping to get our answer. So let's do one more of these problems on the video, and then you can practice. Okay, so here we go with problem number 2. So example 2 is 12x squared minus 51x plus 12. 12x squared plus 51x plus 12. I didn't write that 51 very well. So step 1 is to find the GCF if there is one. All right, well, I'm going to help you out with this. Let's do our prime factorization. 12, I'm going to say, is 2 times 6, and 2 is prime. 6 is 2 times 3, and those are prime. 51, I'm just going to help you out. 51 is actually 17 times 3, believe it or not. 17 is prime, 3 is prime. And we got another 12 over here, so I'm going to go 2 times 6. And 6 is 2 times 3. Okay? So there's your prime factorization. So let's write this out. I've got 12x squared, 51x, and 12. So let's write our prime factors. So for 12x squared, I have 2 times 2 times 3 times x times x. For 51, I have 17 times 3 times x. And for 12, I have 2 times 2 times 3. Now the only thing that's common to all of them is this little guy right here, the 3. So the 3 is my greatest common factor, and I forgot to write my answer format down here before I started. So sorry. So I'm going to have 3 terms, and I'm going to have a minus and a plus. Beep, beep. Okay? So my 3, my greatest common factor, goes out front, and now that's taken care of, so I'm actually going to cross him out. And what I have left in my first term is 2 times 2, which is 4, times x, x squared. So this is 4x squared. Middle term, I have 17 times x, which is 17x. And the bottom term, I have 2 times 2, which is 4. So now I have factored this out. So we did the GCF. Now I have to write my final answer format. So write your final answer format. Okay? So my final answer format, let me give myself lots of room here, is 3, because that's my GCF, and then the remaining trinomial is going to be split into the 2 factors. Okay? So now we're going to continue on using Rainbow XT. We're just going to factor this part because we've already factored the GCF out. Okay? So the next step is to do our Rainbow XT. I'm just writing it again because you can't see my other page. So my Rainbow XT, my rainbow value is 4 times 4 is 16. 16 here. My sum term is negative 17. So I have to find factors of 16 that add up to negative 17. Well, if I do 1 times 16, that adds up to 17, or that adds up to 17, but I need it to add up to negative 17. Well, a positive times a positive is a positive, but so is a negative times a negative. So negative 1 plus negative 16, that does equal negative 17. So these are my 2 factors that I'm now going to do grouping with. So now I'm going to do my grouping. So I'm going to take these 2 factors and I'm going to split the 17 to be negative 1x minus 16x. So write the whole thing again. So this is minus 1x, or minus x, same thing, and then minus 16x, and then here's my plus 4. So all I did is I split the negative 17 into the 2 factors that I found. Next I'm going to do grouping. So let's write the graphic organizer that we had, and we're just going to look at this group right here. Now the only thing I can divide out of this grouping is an x. So again, you could take this over to the side and do your factor trees and find your GCF if you need to. In light of time, I'm just going to tell you the GCF is x, and I have left over 4x minus 1. So remember, your 4x minus 1, whatever goes in this parenthesis also goes in this one. And now I'm going to look at this other group of terms here, and I have to say what this down here has to equal what's in there. So 4x times something is negative 16x. So that would be negative 4. And now I have my answer. So what goes in the parentheses goes in the parentheses down here, 4x minus 1. And what is in the blanks out front, x minus 4, goes in the second parentheses, x minus 4. This is my final answer. Now to check real quick by box method. So we're going to check using box method. and I'm going to do that real quick for you. So box method over here, I'm going to box these two things. I've got 4x minus 1 and x minus 4. So that's 16x squared, negative x, negative 16x, and positive 4. So if I add those together, I get 16. What did I just do wrong? I made a mistake. Sorry, that's not 16. That's 4x squared. I'm trying to go too fast here. So I have 4x squared minus 16x minus x. Those are my middle terms, plus 4. And that does give me, whoops, you can't see what I'm doing. That does give me 4x squared minus 17x plus 4. So that's what this equals. And then I've got to multiply that times 3. So when I do that and I distribute, 3 times 4x squared is 12x squared. 3 times negative 17 is negative 51x. 3 times 4 is positive 12. And if you remember, that is what we started with way up at the beginning of the problem. I hope that's helpful. I know that was kind of fast. Feel free to watch it again in your spare time. And good luck with the practice problems.